What's up, you beautiful chuds, and welcome to the Let's Talk Horror channel. It is review time because I went to my local cinema to go and watch Obsession, a new movie for 2026. It is a movie that is the hot property in the world of horror at the moment. It has a lot of hype around it. So, of course, I had to go and see the movie for myself. And is the hype really worth it? Well, we're going to get into all of it. The movie Obsession is all about Bear, a boy in love with the beautiful Nikki, who obtains a one-wish willow. He thinks that this is just a playful little toy and makes the wish for Nikki to love him more than anybody in the entire world. But unfortunately, this isn't a kid's toy. This does, in fact, it does come true more than he could ever imagine. And unfortunately, he discovers that this wish comes with a dark and sinister price to pay. So we're going to get into all of this. There is so much to unpack when it comes to this movie. As I said, it is the big thing in the world of horror. Critics love it. The audience love it. Well, how do I feel about it? Well, I do my reviews. If you know the reviews, you know the channel. If you've seen them before, I do them a little bit different to what a lot of other people do. For one, I want to try and give you my very, very honest thoughts on it. There are, of course, a lot of people out there that are, we live in a world now where people get paid to say how fucking great a movie is. I'm not one of those people, so don't worry about it. I'm going to give you my very honest thoughts about this movie. To do that, I have to talk about things that happen in the movie. So if you haven't seen Obsession yet, go and watch it, irrelevant of what I say, irrelevant of what anybody says. Go and watch it, make your own mind up about how you feel about it. But for this review, I'm going to be going into things that happen in the movie for me to tell you how I feel about it. So there are going to be spoilers. I will be talking about things that happen in the film and so on, just so I can give you my very honest thoughts about it. And the way that I do that is that I split it all up. So I go through my pros, which is what the things I like about the movie, my cons, which is what I don't like about the movie, and then I give you my overall thoughts and any other sort of little things that I want to talk about when it comes to this movie and what it's all about and whether really I like it. So let's get into my pros. So as I said, I have loads to unpack with this movie. So I've got so many notes, it's ridiculous. The first pro that I want to talk about is something that I really, truly loved about this movie. And I love the fact that it is unapologetically exactly what it is in regards to the idea, the concept, the story of what the One Wish Willow is. I love the fact that there is literally no explanation what on earth this is, where it came from. There's no like backstory. It literally is an existing thing in this universe. Now, of course, there comes with plot holes, like for example, like why isn't there like crazy shit happening in the world, because we know that it's not just Bear that has this one wish willow and then it's only him. It's not like an isolated incident, so to speak. We know that other people have done it, so we're not necessarily seeing like the crazy stuff that they may have wished for or so on, but it may be a case. I don't know, we don't know, and that's what makes it interesting, because it could lead to more. I know Curry Barker has spoken a little bit about how it could lead to more, but as I said, in regards to this movie itself, I love the fact that it doesn't brush over it. It even talks about the fact of this wild scenario, that this One Wish Willow thing is a real thing that works, that other people know about it and other people have used it. I love that, because especially for someone like me, like it makes you feel like the old school things like Tales from the Crypt and like Twilight Zone episodes, but just made like into a movie format. Like it makes the idea, the concept so much fun, so much intrigue, so intriguing. And also, when you have an idea like that, which is say, essentially like an old school told story of the rabbit's foot, so to speak, it means that you're already opening up yourself to a world of creativity. Essentially, anything can go with means in regards to the budget and what you can actually create for the movie. But really, it does mean that you are forcing creativity, and that is so exciting and makes the movie so exciting. The fact that it isn't just getting bogged down in backstory, and it's not him going to find out how, so many of these movies would be about him trying to track down a way, whether it goes off and it ends up being like witches that have put curses on things, and you know what I mean, like it'd be a movie about him trying to track down how he gets rid of this all. There essentially is no way to really get rid of it all apart from what happens in the movie, or there is a way. Um but but it but every step of the way, it just is, as I said, unapologetically is exactly what it is. And I think that that is such a testament and a credit to the movie when it comes to the directing, the writing, the fact that they just say, it's a real thing, by the way, and it exists in this world, in this universe, and it's not just him, and they don't just brush over it, they even talk about it. I love the fact, as I said, there's something very like old school about it. You know, in a world now where everything feels either hyper realistic or so mundane or so bleak and everything like that, and I'm going to get into all of that. Like, this adds like that layer of fun element into a movie already, and that's what makes it really, really exciting. um Technically, this is a movie, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in my cons as well, which isn't really much of a con, but I'm going to talk about that as well. But technically, in regards to how this movie is very good at delivering impact in the moments that it needs to, it does that so well. Like Harry Barker and everybody that created this movie really truly understands how to create dread, create tension through showing us what we are supposed to be seeing on screen. And I love that. Whether it is Nikki, you know, in the background, in the shadows, or Nikki in the background, you can see her just in there constantly looking at Bear, watching what he's doing. You know, they are really, really doing everything they can to deliver the impact of how sort of dark and sinister this can be, but also, once again, it is still something that delivers on the fun side of it as well, which is also, once again, one of my pros. The fact is that this is a very dark comedy, but it is very, very funny. Like, it's very well written, and even in those moments where really dark, fucked up, sinister things are happening, like, for example, you know, it might be Nikki lurking in, you know, you sort of slowly, like the light sort of slowly shows her a little bit more hiding in the corner in the shadows, for example, in like a bedroom scene and so on. You can see her in the corner. And the way that she is, her moving, the way that she's saying stuff, it's it's terrifying, but it's also hilarious because of, you know, of the absolute insane wild ride that we're on with this movie. So they deliver technically the impact of what they're trying to achieve in the movie, which is great. As I said, there is a bit of a con of that, but I'll go into that. And that's not just this movie, it's a lot of movies, but I'll talk about that when I get into the cons. But I do love the fact that they deliver in every aspect of the fact that they're delivering on the impact of the tension and the dread and everything that happens. And when do things happen, it's instantaneous. Like, it's like a big like smack round the face. It's happening. And it's very violent, very visual, very brutal, which I'll talk about as well in a sec. And it's really expertly crafted in those moments. But on top of that, it's still funny when a lot of this stuff is happening, because you're like, what the absolute shit is going on? It's wild, the stuff that happens in this movie. Once again, it's a credit to the writing and the directing and anybody involved of the process of it. They obviously clearly know the movie they're making. Once again, it becomes about the movie being unapologetically what it is, which is great. Talking about the violence, the brutality side of it, this is a very violent movie. It has great practical effects, or the blend of usage of visual effects with CGI and so on. Like, whatever they're doing, it worked. But there are some very hard-hitting, brutal moments in this movie that sort of, it's weird when you watch this movie at a cinema. Once again, it's about the craftsmanship, where they're delivering these moments where you're sitting there and you're actually like, it's quite comical, you're laughing, but then a second later, when I went and watched this at the cinema, everybody was in complete like silence, because it goes from like hilarious things happening that are wild and you're like, what is this crazy stuff that's happening, to someone like, you know, Nikki might be stabbing her own face, or she's doing something very horrible to somebody in a car without trying to give too much away. You know, there are some very wild, very brutal, violent, visceral moments in this movie. Once again, they nail it in that respect as well. And then, of course, it's got a soundtrack that's absolutely fantastic. And I was a little bit worried when I first sort of heard the soundtrack when it started going, because the problem is we have a big thing that you may know of called Stranger Things. And ever since Stranger Things, so many movies have that synth sort of soundtrack. And it's getting to a point now where it's just like, it's a little bit annoying because not a synth soundtrack, it always pretty much sounds cool, but it doesn't always mean that it's relevant to the type of movie that you're creating. You know, if you're making a really bleak, sinister sort of movie, sometimes having a synth soundtrack, which sometimes can come off as a little bit playful, doesn't necessarily always match the tension and the dread that people are going for in their movies. But sometimes having a synth score and then somebody smashing the shit out of a keyboard might be cheaper than having a full orchestra making a proper score, right? So sometimes they go on that. So when I heard it, I was a little bit, not another like synth score where they're reliant on the Stranger Things sort of stuff. But what I like about the score is that there are so many moments within it where things are happening, and the score is always almost replicant or representative of what is happening in the movie in regards to the tone. There's a lot of like moments where the score is out of key, and that replicates, as I said, like what is happening at the moment on screen. And I really like that because once again, it's a really good use of score, because once again, it's telling us, a viewer, how we're supposed to feel or what it's trying to make us feel in those moments. So once again, good filmmaking. And then on top of that, the sound design is absolutely fantastic. I've been really impressed by a lot of sound design recently in quite a lot of horror movies, like the ones that are done well, because sound design, as we know, is so important to film, but especially in horror, because the sound design can be, if you've got a supernatural movie and it's about ghosts, you've got to have great sound design to deliver the impact of that. If it's about, the brutality of like the violence of somebody getting macheted and stuff, you want to hear that, you want to feel that. And sound design is so important to that. And once again, this is a movie that delivers on that, whether it's the sound of Nikki moving around, and or whether it's the sound of the brutality that happens in the movie, in the violent moments. Once again, they're hitting those moments, they're hitting those beats with the sound design. So it just works. And then, of course, on top of all of that, you've got the performances. There are all-round very good performances in this, but of course, like one of the big names that people are going to be talking about from this movie, they already are, is Indy Navarrete, which could be said wrong. I apologize if it is, but I'm not great with names. But she is incredible in this. And I think for me, the reason that she's incredible, for example, this is a type of role that people can play. I don't think this is a role where you're like, only certain people can do this. This is a role that a lot of people can play. People can play crazy, right? We've seen it in many, many films. I think the reason why her performance is so good in this is because she has managed to create a character that feels like it hasn't existed before. The way her facial expressions and the way that she's explicitly showing her feelings about what is happening in the scene, like in the scene where they're playing the Jenga thing that they've got, and they've got the things written on the Jenga, and it's the way that she's reacting to it, with a sort of sad face that is like the most emoji looking sad face ever, or the way that she's overly happy or overly excited. Like the way that she's depicting these emotions and the way that they're obviously filming them, in a lot of these emotions that they're doing as well, there's a lot of like long shots that are, very slow shots on a lot of what she's doing, or what Nikki's doing in the movie. This is obviously a slow burn movie. It's not necessarily a massively fast paced movie, but I think that works obviously in its benefit because it doesn't get boring. But a huge part of the fact that it doesn't get boring is how good Indy Navarrete is at portraying this character. And I think that, there are so many moments when you can see there's something, there's somebody in her eyes. You can feel that the Nikki is locked inside of her. And this false representation of love that she's putting out there towards Bear, like you can feel that there's the separation of that. And I love that. And I think that is why her performance is so good, because it feels so new, it feels so fresh. It's a different way of portraying these types of characters that we have seen for so many years in so many different types of movies in the genre and outside of the genre. Crazy is easy to play, right? But it doesn't mean that you're going to play it right. Indy Navarrete absolutely plays it right, and so did everybody in this film. The performances. If you have crap performances in a movie like this that is such hard hitting in so many moments and so emotional in so many moments, if you have performances that don't do it, well, then the movie doesn't work. So there's a lot to love about this movie. There really, really is. And I'm sure there's absolutely loads more that I can't even remember right now. And maybe I'll remember when I do my overall thoughts. But right now, let's get into my cons, the things that I don't like about the movie. So when it comes to my cons, of course, there were so many things that I liked about the movie. And the honest truth is that there's not that much in regards to what I don't like about the movie. I think one of the big things for me is not necessarily something that this movie is the only one that does, but I am a little bit bored in regards to the visual storytelling or the visual looks of movies that we are getting in the world of horror at the moment. I just wish there was a little bit more. And what I mean by that is that, so as I already said, like in regard to this movie alone, and I'm just talking about Obsession at the moment, is that, like I've already mentioned, that where this movie is very much, like the old school tale of the rabbit's foot and all the stories around that sort of stuff, and you make a wish and the wish comes true, and, hilarity ensues, although not so much hilarity with this movie. Although, like I said, it's hilarious and sometimes hilarious for the wrong reasons. But when you do that, like I said, you open yourself up to so much creativity. And when I said about the technical journey we're on in regards to they know exactly what they're doing to show us the tension, the dread, they did that so well, and they used the shadows right, and set up shots well and so on like that. But I just wish that when it got to those sort of like the harder hitting moments, I wish there was a little bit more visual creativity, going a little bit more gnarlier, a little bit more crazier with, say, the shots to deliver, the impact of the visual violence and brutality that we're seeing. Some of the shots were very much like set up the shot and then film what's happening. And I'm not saying at any point that this movie looks bad, and it really doesn't. It's a very, very good looking movie, and there are some fantastic shots in this movie. But I just wish that there was certain moments that where this is a very slow paced movie, sometimes the moments of brutality or the things that happen, I wish that they didn't match the pace of the rest of the movie. I wish there was that little bit more. But you can do that by using the visual medium of storytelling with cinema, and I just wish there was a little bit more creativity. This movie, is one of those movies where it would have, like, imagine, in my head, I'm like, I would have loved like some of the odd like Sam Raimi Evil Dead style sort of shots in this movie. But some of it is very much like, moving the camera to pan from here to here, rather than thinking of a creative way of going from here to there. Whereas, people like Sam Raimi and, the masters of horror, they will find the creative way from going from here to there. And I just wish there was a little bit more of that. Once again, this movie looks great. There is a lot of fantastic things in it creatively in regards to like visually, but I just wish there was just a tiny bit more. But once again, this isn't necessarily much of a con because of how many pros there are in the movie. But this is just me being honest in regards to someone that, obviously outside of all this, wants to be a filmmaker. As a filmmaker, I just wish there was a little bit more creativity when it went from here to there and how we do that. I wish there was a little bit more. And the other thing as well, which is not just talking about Obsession, it's talking about a lot of modern day horror, is that I wish they were using the color palette as a visual storytelling medium a little bit more, because this movie is a very sort of like dark, it's a very dark movie, and it looks very bleak. And I'm not talking about the stuff that happens in the movie, I'm talking about the look of the movie. And so much of horror is very much like this now, void of color. And sometimes, like having that color can really be representative of making you feel how you're supposed to feel in regards to the story. For example, everybody in this movie is sort of troubled in their own way. But you could, at the start of the movie, it's sort of like the happy moments before the storm hits. And I would have loved it if this movie went and had, like, didn't have this such a dark, shadows everywhere, bleak color palette at the start of the movie, and then sort of gradually like was a little bit more saturated, a little bit more color when everything's a little bit right, everything's a little bit happier. And then as we go through the movie, the more the madness sets into the movie, then you're able to bring in the bleakness of the colors and transform the movie into what essentially is happening on the screen that we're seeing. We can see it in regards to the visual medium of storytelling as well. Unfortunately, like I said, this isn't just Obsession that it does it with. A lot of movies are so dimly lit. So many movies are so difficult to see anything. And in this movie, there are moments where it's very difficult to see a lot, but there are moments where there aren't things. Like, for example, is it great to have moments where Nikki is in the shadows in the absolute darkness, and it heightens the tension and the dread, and you don't know what she's going to do, or you don't know if she's done anything to herself. Once again, you don't know what she's going to look like, you don't know what she's going to do. That is great when you're having that in the shadows and in the darkness, and you don't know. It really, like, it sells that, right? And they do a lot of that in the movie. But in the moments that aren't that, bring a bit of color into it, bring a bit of life into it. But so much of the movies now are very bleak in the way that they look, and I wish that we didn't have that as much. I these movies are so mundane in regards to, or so nihilistic in their approach in regards to concept, idea, story, and what we see. Maybe do the opposite of that when it comes to the visual storytelling as well, and gradually, as we go through it, you can change it very, little bits, and then it makes it makes the impact on the audience greater when these horrible things are happening. But once again, that's only me really talking about the visual style of the movie. When it comes to that's not me talking about the performances, that's not me talking about the technical journey in regards to delivering the impact of the actual moments in the movie. That's not me talking about performances, that's not me talking about anything. That's just me talking about what I wished a little bit more on the visual creative side. But I suppose, that's a lot better than me saying there was a load of things wrong and it should have been a million times better. But talking about that, let's go into our overall thoughts. Now, talking about my overall thoughts, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about that aren't necessarily, they are connected to the movie, but they're a little bit different before I go into the movie itself, because I think they are important. First of all, this is a Blumhouse movie. Blumhouse are the corporate greed train of Hollywood horror. Like, they are that production company now, and I think that unfortunately they're churning out so much crap that they have really forgotten what they are, where they came from. They were a company that had an incredible business model of basically getting incredibly creative directors, not giving them much money, and it meant that their playground that they had to make these movies was not as accessible as giving whatever money they wanted, which obviously is happening a lot in cinema at the moment as well. Give people everything they want, and it means that they can do whatever they want, and it means you're lessening creativity, right? So by not giving people as much, you're taking, you're forcing creativity, you're forcing people to go, well, if we can't do this, how do we do this? Or how, what is going to give the same or even better of an impact of what we wanted to do, and so on. So as I said, it's forcing creativity. And this movie is a prime example of that business model, of that working when Blumhouse gets it right, because this isn't a $10 million, $20 million budget movie. This movie, I think, cost less than $1 million. And I think there are things, if you gave it a bit of a bigger budget, I think there's things that they could have possibly done. I think maybe the set pieces themselves, they could have been a little bit more grander, a little bit bigger. But I think that also there was something that I didn't add into my cons that I'm going to add actually into here, because I completely forgot about that because I'm a moron and I've got so much to go through and so much to unpack. But going back to the Blumhouse thing, I just hope that Blumhouse go, right, oh shit, like, I remember what we were doing and what we originally set out to do, to give creative filmmakers the opportunity to be creative and give them money to make a movie, but force them to be creative. And by giving them what they want and loads of money, we've seen what has happened with Blumhouse. We've seen what happens with horror when you give people whatever they want. Unfortunately, the end product ends up being nowhere near what it should be. Obsession is a prime example of doing that business model, going back to it, and it being so successful. Look at what this movie has done for the horror world right now, because this isn't just the horror world talking about it. This is cinema talking about it. This is people who are just who are outside of horror, are reading these reviews, seeing these critics, seeing what people are saying, and they're going to the cinema to see this movie. It might end up not being the type of movie they like because of everything that happens in it, but Blumhouse have a successful movie on their hand that didn't cost them much money. That's what they need to be doing. That's what they need to be going back to. That's what they need to be living and breathing for horror and for them as a company, so they can get out of the doghouse of making fucking shit movies constantly. And then the other thing, which obviously does really lead into where this movie is and how I feel about this movie is. So if you know Let's Talk Horror, of course, one of the things that you know is that I am not the biggest fan of where we are in horror at the moment. I'm not the biggest fan of nihilism, of where we are, where the movie starts with no hope and ends with even less. We go on a journey with these characters that most of the time we really don't give a shit about. Once again, is a pro, and I'll talk about that as well. Already I'm thinking of more things that I like and things that I don't like, so I'm gonna have to get into it all again. But yeah, this movie is you know, a very, once again, a representative of that nihilism. But the thing that I talk about all the time when it comes to it is that I do not mind these movies if they are going to do one thing, and that is earn it. If they are going to go from start to the end where nothing but horrible things happen and we witness some absolutely messed up things, and it's so bleak and mundane in regards to, like, you know, everything that happens in the movie, if it earns it, I'm fine with that. And so many movies, unfortunately, in modern day horror, they take this route of nihilism, but they do not earn it. There are so many journeys with characters that you just don't care about, where these journeys are just, they're just there to be people, to die, and that's all we're going to see. And then it's the end, the movie's going to end horribly and everyone's dead, you know? That's where we are in the world of horror, and people are eating it up. They absolutely love it, and I do not. I'm not that one of those people that loves where we are in modern day horror. This movie absolutely, obviously, as I've spoken, earns it, absolutely earns it. And there's not that many movies that do earn it. You know, movies like Talk to Me, Bring Her Back, they're movies that earn it. You know, they are creatively, technically so well put together. They earn the fact that they're allowed, in my book, to make me feel like shit. If you want to make me feel like shit, earn it. The same when it comes to When Evil Lurks. Absolutely incredible movie. One of the most horrible movies that you will see, and the journey that we go on with this character, every step of the way it gets worse and worse and worse, and then we get to the ending, and I'm going to say nothing, but we get to the ending and the nihilism continues, but it earns it, and it earns the right to make me feel like shit. Obsession earns the right to make me feel like shit, because at the same time, even though it is a very, very dark, sadistic, sinister movie, and there are some really, really dark undertones to this movie, it still is fun. There is the way that they've, you know, constructed the dark comedy side of it and made it fun. That also is another reason as to why it earns it. The other thing that I did miss that was a pro, which I need to talk about as well, is the fact that we have characters that we are really happy to be on this journey with, no matter how dark it goes. And we do sort of hope and wish that everybody gets the happy ending they sort of deserve. But then you start thinking more into it and you're like, well, who does deserve the happy ending? Who's the real bad guy of this movie? And it really makes it very, very interesting. But once again, you know, we start off with Bear, You know, and you know, he is who he is, right? And he has these feelings, and he's about trying to get them out. But of course, you know, is his you know, the humanity of the decision that he makes, the wish that he makes, and how he continues that forth, you know, is the humanity side of it there. And that's the interesting part as well, you know, and who he is as a person, or who he becomes as a person, and so on, and everything that's going on in the movie. Once again, you're still intrigued, you're still interested in him and where the journey goes. Is he going to redeem himself, or is he going to make everything even worse for himself? Once again, I don't see that in so many movies that I watch now. From start to finish, you're intrigued by these characters and their journeys. You want to spend time with them, and you don't get that very often. And in this movie, you really, really do. I think there is, as well as that in this movie, like I mentioned, with some of the decisions that Bear is making, or the things that happen in the movie, I think there is some really like unsettling and uncomfortable scenes. You know, you've of course, you know, you've got the brutality and the violence side of this movie. You know, once it goes to those places, it's going to those places. It's not holding back. This movie is not going to hold back. But like I mentioned a little bit with Bear as well, it's the morality side of it as well. Like, he's made this wish, and now he's got to live with it, and he's got to make these decisions that he's doing. But there is a moment in it that is like sort of, you know, uncomfortable in regards to like the decision that he's made, because he does know at this point in the movie that he's made this wish, and this wish has basically come true. And he does, you know, have sex with Nikki in it. And I remember feeling really uncomfortable and unsettled in that moment, because, of course, you know, he's basically having sex with somebody who, you know, against that person's will. You know, like, that person isn't able to make that decision. You know, Nikki is trapped. The real Nikki is trapped inside of this essentially fake Nikki that's been wished upon, you know. And that was like, when I was watching that, I was really sort of unsettling, you know, that the first thought to my head was, you know, like, she's trapped in there, and, you know, she's feeling all of this, you know what I mean? Like, this is not what she wants, but it's what he wants, and the humanity side of that as well. You know, that's the interesting, you know, the conflicting side of humanity side of, you know, of how we feel about that as a viewer, you know. And I remember feeling like really unsettled in a moment like that. The blood, the guts, the gore, of course, that's not the thing that unsettled me, even though it's absolutely wild, some of the stuff, you know, the moment in the car with the face smashing and everything like that. So creative, so fun. Um, but it's the moments like that where you think a little bit further into it, and you think about how, you know, you're like, poor Nikki, you know, and then you have like a little bit of you know, you lose the respect for Bear a little bit, because you know that he knows what sort of is going on at that point, and this probably isn't the right decision, even though it's something that he wants. Well, she hasn't got a say in it, and that's unsettling, and that's a, you know, a creepy part. I mean, this movie is a fucking creepy movie, right? But it's not creepy just because of, you know, Nikki lurking in the shadows. It's for sometimes think moments like this in the movie, and it's really gross. And sometimes, you know, as I said, it's the humanity or the decisions that are made by people in the movie is what is, you know, a dark and sinister moment of the movie. The other thing with the movie is that even though it is slow paced, and it is a slow movie, it delivers, like I said, in every aspect of delivering those impacts. And also, it never gets bored. I never got bored of this movie, because when you are having those moments that are, you know, conversational moments, something is still happening in those moments, whether it's driving, like, you know, a bit of a comedy aspect and making you laugh, or it's still driving the, you know, the story or the characters, and setting up everything that's going to happen later on in the movie. It's constantly entertaining, this movie, and that's absolutely, you know, incredible. It doesn't feel, even though this movie is a nihilistic movie and set in that this modern day world of horror, nihilism, and so on like that, even though it does have, you know, the dark comedy side, and it is laugh out loud funny on quite a lot of moments. Once again, whether you're supposed to laugh or not, you do. It doesn't feel like everything else in modern day horror, and that is a, you know, and I think a lot of that is the driving force. It's a little bit like The Monkey, right? Which is the Osgood Perkins one that obviously was pretty recent as well. You know, once again, that was another movie that was unapologetically exactly what it is, and this movie feels the same in a little bit as well, but because of the concept, the story, the idea of, you know, the One Wish Willow, it already makes it a little bit different. It makes it a bit unique. It makes it fun. And like I said, it breeds creativity when you just go down that route of it just being a wild concept and an idea and running with it. And that's exactly what they do in this movie. I honestly can't. I already can't wait to watch this again. This is a fantastic movie. Indy Navarrete, of course, you know, like, is she absolutely phenomenal? Yes. Should she win awards? Yes. I think she should win awards for this. But there are a lot of fantastic performances that we get already, and I'm sure there will continue to be a lot of fantastic performances. Like I said, with her in this movie, it's just something where she just brings something that feels so unique, so fresh to the character of Nikki, that feels like it hasn't been represented this way into film before. Or if it has, this is the one that I'm going to remember that does it. You know, this is a movie, this is a performance that a lot of people are going to remember. This is a movie that a lot of people are going to be talking about for a long time. I think that this movie might do what a lot of movies don't do now, and I think that, like, maybe in 10 years time people will still be going, how good this is, and I think it will still be a movie that people will put on and enjoy. And I can't say that for a lot of movies that I see now. You know, there's very rarely do I watch a movie now that I think to myself, is this going to be one of the classics? Is this going to be one of the movies that people will still continue to talk about in 10 years? And I think it might be. I genuinely think it might be. We won't know unless, you know, because we could get 10 years of absolutely incredible movies like this. And you're like, oh, remember when there was a one that was really good called Obsession? And people are like, yeah, but there's been 1,000 since then. I don't know. But I do think that this movie might be one that stands the test of time. And I think a lot of that was to do with the fact that, like I said, unapologetically, it is what it is. It's got the brutal moments. It's got the comedy. It is entertaining. It doesn't get boring. It is creepy. But Indy Navarrete's performance is great. So do I think that she should get awards? Yes. But we also do live in a world where Sally Hawkins didn't get an Oscar for her performance in Bring Her Back, which literally is one of the best performances. I mean, it's the best performance of that year. It's one of the best, like, it's a pure acting performance where you're like, oh, okay, well, no one's going to do that better. But in the end, Amy Madigan, obviously, who was great as Aunt Gladys, she won the Oscar for supporting actor. And I don't really get it when you've got Sally Hawkins, who's, like, essentially, you know, throughout the whole movie delivering the performance that she did. So it also makes me then think about the fact that Indy Navarrete probably won't get anything, and I hope that I'm wrong. This is not me saying she ain't going to get anything. This is me. I want her to get what she deserves, accolades and recognition for her performance in this movie. But I don't know if it's going to happen, because we already had someone like Sally Hawkins that didn't get the recognition that she deserves when it came to the award season, and she absolutely should. So I don't know if Indy Navarrete will, but I really hope that she does, because what a truly great performance. But damn, what a fucking good movie. Jesus Christ. I mean, as I said, this has probably been my longest review, because there's so much to unpack with this movie, and there's so much that I know that I haven't spoke about, and I know that, as I said, I can't wait to watch this movie again. And of course, you know, down the line, I will absolutely, you know, this will be a movie that I will do a podcast episode about, of course, you know, and there's not many movies that I can say that about. There's so many movies that I watch and I'm like, I don't have to talk about that on the podcast. I have to talk about this movie on a podcast. I can't wait to do, a deep dive breakdown into everything that Obsession is. I can't wait to see it again. In regards to Curry Barker, what a great movie that he's crafted and created. What a great crew that he's got with him as well already. You know, Curry Barker, as we know, was creating horror and creating movies for YouTube. I hate calling it, I don't like it when people call YouTube filmmakers or YouTubers turned movie, you know, filmmakers and stuff, because there are some people like Curry Barker who, you know, they don't have the people that are there to support them creating actual movies, right? So then they make movies because it's what they want to do. Like Curry Barker is a filmmaker, or wants to be, or wanted to be. He is now, especially after this. Like Curry Barker is going to be walking into every meeting that he's got, trying to sell a movie. Like that guy, that little kid with the cowboy hat spinning around throwing finger guns. That's going to be Curry Barker walking into every meeting that he's got, trying to pitch a movie going forwards. But he was somebody that wanted to be a filmmaker, and the system isn't great for a lot of people. So that's what YouTube is great for. YouTube is there because anyone can put up any video they bloody want. And he was creating things, and he was creating short movies and whatever he wanted to, and putting them on. He was building up a portfolio already on YouTube. And then he gets to go on and create something like Obsession, and in everything he does going forward. So absolute kudos to him, because he's created something that, as I said, has really created a storm in the horror world, and not just the horror world, in cinema. Not many movies do we get to see out there that are putting, getting critical responses at 90 something percent and audience scores at 90 something percent. Very rarely do we see that, and this movie is one of them. So I can't wait to see it again. Curry Barker has really achieved something. Of course, it's come out recently. He has got another movie that he's working on. Of course, the big news is that he's also going to be making the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. I'm excited about that. But after watching this movie, he did also come out recently and said that he would like to do a Nightmare on Elm Street. Weirdly enough, I would actually prefer him to do a Nightmare on Elm Street than a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Am I going to watch his Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Absolutely, especially after Obsession. I am absolutely going to watch it. But I actually, when I was watching this, Nightmare on Elm Street is another series, another franchise that means if you get the right people, it can breed creativity. And I think that Curry Barker can do that, as he's shown with Obsession. And I think that he could actually be a very good fit for a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. But everybody wants to do a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, right? And all the rights are up in the air, so we may never even get one. But at the moment, we know we're getting a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie from him, and I am looking forward to that even more so now. Of course, beforehand, you're like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I don't know if I want to go through another one. But now he's doing it. Now I absolutely want to go through another one to see what he's going to bring up. But honestly, if you're watching this and you haven't watched Obsession yet, which I said at the start, I mean, don't do that. Go and watch Obsession. Irrelevant of what I say, irrelevant of what anybody says. Make sure that you watch Obsession and try and watch it at the cinema, because it's a great experience. And it always, of course, is going to be a great experience at the cinema. And also, go and try and do everything we can to make as much money for this movie, for Curry Barker, for independent film. Let's try and make as much money for this. But if you are watching this without seeing it at the cinema, get yourself to the cinema. It's so good. And as I said, I cannot wait to watch this again. I really can't. This is going to be a movie that is going to be at the top or near the top for so many people. Like, honestly, I do think that almost everybody's list at the end of the year, unless more things come out and they top this, which part of me really hopes. Like, I think we're in an interesting time with horror at the moment, aren't we? Because there is a lot of this year, I feel like the quality of movies, we're getting quantity, but we're starting to narrow down what creates the quality of horror as well. And we've got, of course, this month we've got Backrooms as well. We've got Passenger. Already I'm hearing great things about those critically. So as long as it's not the people that are getting paid to say how bloody good they are, and then we're going to be fooled by all those people, we're in a good space where we are with horror at the moment, even though we are, once again, some of the movies, the creativity is pushing it outside of the nihilism for me, and that's great, especially for me, because I want more movies like Obsession. I want more movies like this that are, breeding creativity in horror, and once again, more importantly, earn it. But sometimes, you just have to sit down and think about it, and then go, you know what, sometimes things as the way they are, maybe it's enough. But I suppose you do really, you have to be careful what you wish for, because sometimes you end up getting something really, really bad out of it, like what happens in this movie. So the moral of the story is maybe everything's all right, and be careful what you wish for. Well, there we go. If you enjoyed this review, super long review of Obsession, then thank you so much for watching, and make sure you subscribe, because obviously that's how I keep going, and it means a lot to me. But until next time, stay creepy, fuckers.